Want to let you know that we're going to be recording the office hours.
And I just
So
pushed record right now, Nina. I'm sorry, I forgot to start it before.
that's
So
okay.
we're recording as of now.
And we know that some of you may not be willing to be recorded. So if you're not willing to be recorded, please feel free to drop off and watch our replay, which will be posted on YouTube by Monday. Definitely is a great idea to go ahead and just subscribe to our YouTube channel. So every time we put up a new resource for you, that you will just get a nice notification from YouTube. We just want to let you know that for copyright and for personal privacy reasons of the participants, recording or reposting of this from other people is not okay with us. Definitely check out our replays and they'll always be there. We want to let you know, go ahead and connect with us on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter. We have a presence on many social media platforms so that people can find us and find our really great resources for kids who stutter and their families. And without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get right into questions and answers about school age stuttering today, because that's what our office hours topic is. Go ahead and use the raise your hand if you want to actually ask the question in person, or if you want to just put up some questions in chat, that will be fine. And we're just going to continually try to do our best in getting your questions answered. We don't know how many we'll have time for, but we'll do the best we can. And then I want to let you know, we're just going to have you sort of frame your questions as succinctly and specifically as possible. And today we're going to try to keep the questions geared toward the school age and adolescent populations, because that's our topic for today. We've already done an office hours on early childhood, and we have so many resources on YouTube, on our blogs, on our practical tips in our resources tab on our website, that we know that if you need information on early childhood, we've got it for you there as well. So I'm going to go ahead and end the slideshow so that you can see both of us. Wow, great chat. Things are going well already. But we thought, because you're going to populate some questions for us, we'll go ahead and start with a couple of questions that we got from the social media participants that we asked last week and asked them to give us their most immediate question. I will tell you that the first question I'm going to try to launch into, and then Scott's going to piggyback on another type of the same question, but it's a question we are getting consistently every time we present somewhere. Anytime we're talking with colleagues, we get a question framed around the idea of, what do I do with the children who are exhibiting different kinds of stuttering? And so what they're really asking is about is what we in the fluency disorder community are terming atypical disfluencies, because what these children are presenting with are the mid-word breaks and sometimes the final syllable, illable repetitions, uns. And so that is a phenomenon that is something that we're still studying. And so Scott and I talk about this a lot, and we banter back and forth on this topic, because it's very hard to be considered experts in the field of fluency disorders and not have all the answers. And we have to say on this topic, we don't have all the answers. But I'd like to provide a few ideas of some of the things that researchers and clinicians have been working on in this area of atypical disfluencies. And then I promise you a blog, and we might even be, I think Scott and I decided that we're going to do an office hours next Friday on the hot topics, on the really tough stuff, and we'll include more about this next week as well. But definitely I'll finally get the blog that is written in my head 42 times, but never on the screen. I'll get that out by Monday on atypical disfluencies. So the first thing I want to say is that these children, these people who are doing atypical all kinds of disfluencies, are usually presenting other disorders. We see this type of disfluency most often in the autism spectrum population, children with high degrees of ADHD. I've seen it also, though, Scott and I talk about this, we've seen it in neurotypical populations as well. So it's not just one thing and we can just go laser point and go get it. We really wish these kids would read the manual. Like Scott was telling me this morning as we were getting prepared, we want them to read the manual and realize they're not stuttering the right way, because it is different. And we're not even sure it's going to be classified as stuttering, because it is not usually, the children do not tell us that they're feeling tension. They're not having that out of control movement of physical tension. They are presenting with something else that we're still learning about. But there's something we can do. So even though we're still studying and still learning about this population, I want to make certain that we know that we can bring the best of evidence-based practice of fluency disorders, the entire genre, cluttering, stuttering, and now the atypicals, into our practice with these kiddos. And so one of the things that's been successful for me so far, and for some of the other clinicians that I've been working with, is bringing in the idea of pausing and phrasing. In other words, chunking together and finding out where you're supposed to break with your sentences, and bringing an awareness to kids who don't usually have an awareness that they're doing these types of disfluencies, and then helping them use pausing and phrasing and flowing to keep their sentences in a smoother manner. But I got to tell you, I'm just going to say this out loud. I'm not sure sometimes whether that is the most important thing on a child's list. It depends on how much they're worried about it, how much speakers are reacting to it, how much it's interfering with their communication. And so I'm not saying don't work on it. Absolutely not, because I do. But I also try to pick the battle of what that child needs most for most effective communication. And it also, of course, depends on age and awareness and cognitive ability and all of those things that we talk about in the area of fluency disorders when you're trying to choose what's appropriate for each kiddo that you're working with. So that's just one of the many things. I'm going to put up in the blog the resources that are already available on this topic. And you're going to see names like Vivian Siskin and Kathy Scaler-Scott and others who are researching and also writing about it. And I'll try to get all of those into a nice blog that you can click on and go find.
Is it okay if I add just a minor point to that to
Oh, of
amplify one of the
course.
things you said? Yeah, so absolutely, as Nina said, we are not entirely sure what the answers are on this one. None of us knows exactly what we're supposed to do on this one. However, we are finding that the self-awareness of that disruption is often a bit lower. And so if we can increase self-awareness, that gives us an opportunity to help them make a change. I think that's one of the reasons that we tend to see this in children who have co-occurring diagnoses as well. However, sometimes we see it in kids who are typical, just as Nina said. The challenge, of course, is bringing attention to it, helping them know that it's okay that this is happening. We don't want to create fear surrounding it, allowing them to notice it, to catch it. And the treatment is fairly behavioral at that point. It's fairly straightforward. It's just surprising to us because it's not what we typically see.
Right. And Scott, if you can go ahead and let's have you take that question from social media while others are typing their questions in.
You bet. And thank you, folks. I'm starting to see some questions coming in. Terrific. Um, the one particularly challenging situation that we got an email about or a social media post about is the children who do these audible inhalations, either right in the middle of a sentence like this, or, and I can't duplicate it, in the middle of a word like this, or at the beginning of a word. These are challenging. Okay? So the first thing I want you to know is don't be upset at yourself if you have trouble treating these. I'm struggling with it too. We're all struggling with it. But what we can do to help these kids is first think about the source of these behaviors. And very often these behaviors come from an attempt to not stutter. They start out maybe more benign, it's just a little avoidance that the kids are doing, but they can rapidly build into a tense, uh, atypical behavior that's very hard for them to break away from. And if we view them as just examples of avoidance, then that does make things a touch easier for us because we can say, all right, why are they avoiding? Well, they're avoiding because they're not comfortable with stuttering. So we have to take several steps back from thinking about this as just a fluency thing, just a disruption in their speech. What we want to do is we want to come back and say, why are they doing this? They're doing this because they're scared. Can we reduce the fear? Reduce the fear first and then think about the surface behavior that results from the fear. That's desensitization. That's understanding stuttering. That's learning that it's okay to stutter. That's learning to stutter in an easier way. And all of those things give us the opportunity to try to replace this very difficult and tense and uncomfortable behavior for them with an easier stutter. It's still a stutter, but it's an easier stutter. And that's the way I've found success in trying to do this. But do note it's tough, and it's tough for the kids too. They don't want to be doing it. It's just that they don't know what else to do. Nina, you please add to that.
Oh no, I don't think I need to. I think you did it
Okay.
just beautifully. Always.
Great.
I've got a question here about bullying at school
Great.
that
Oh, yes.
I'll
Very
field,
good.
and I see another one coming in about the iceberg. If you want to play with that,
Super.
I've got some ideas about bullying at school. Scott and I have done extensive writing, and Scott has an entire series of videos on our website under the resources tab on how to help children who are experiencing bullying at school. So I'm going to go ahead and say it's really important. I don't need to go into a lot of detail right now to answer this question because it's already done. We have an entire series of books and booklets on our website about bullying and teasing and helping kids who stutter deal with that. We have the workbooks for the parents, the students themselves, and the administrators and teachers. So this person specifically asked about how to help teachers. There's a lot of information in that booklet, and also the booklet we have specifically for teachers that can help teachers understand how to deal with this if it's happening in their classroom. But one thing I want to mention is that bullying and teasing about stuttering doesn't always or even usually happen in the classroom. Um, Other children who tend to bully or tease kiddos do not usually do it in front of the teacher. And so we have to be really part of that team. Okay, can't just leave it to the teachers. The speech language pathologist has to be part of the team who is working to help create a safe environment in that child's school. And directly in therapy, yes, we would work on how to help that child learn how to navigate those tougher times that they may experience, because we can't always keep the bullying from happening, even though we're going to do some really good things to make an attempt. But we can help the child learn how to internally and externally deal with any kind of bullying that they may be receiving in their social environments. So I would direct you to we have some practical tips on this. Those are handouts you can download. We have blog posts on this, and we have a series of videos plus the booklets that I already mentioned. And I think there's so many things that we can do to create that safer environment for kiddos.
And Nina, while you were talking, I put up a share screen showing them the Minimizing Bullying program. And now on the screen, I've got on our resources page on the website, all of our free resources that include our videos, but in particular, this series on minimizing bullying for children who stutter. There's 5 handouts that are free to download and 4 videos that we've done on the topic. It's one of the most important topics, I think, that we can face. And I want to add just one minor point. Don't be surprised if your child isn't telling you that he's being bullied, yet he's being bullied anyway. Because often the kids feel so bad about themselves that they feel as if they deserve it. They feel like, yeah, the bully's right, I can't talk. And they might not even bring it up to their parents or to us or to their teachers. So assume, given the high prevalence of bullying of kids who stutter, assume that it's happening
Mhm.
and work from there rather than waiting until it's a crisis. Prevent it. Don't wait for it. Great. Excellent. Terrific. Shall we go on to a next one?
Yes. Are you going to take the iceberg one?
I will indeed, yes. So this is a terrific question that's come in, approaching the social and emotional aspects of stuttering with teens. How do we start that process off? Because this is uncomfortable for teens. And seriously, who wants to sit in a room with somebody they don't know very well and talk about the thing that scares them the most? And who wants to do that at a time in your life when you're already feeling uncertain? You couldn't pay me anything to go back to being a teenager. Okay. It's a really difficult time of life. And for kids who are struggling with an issue like stuttering, it can be particularly hard. So, how do we help these kids? And in particular, finishing up the rest of the question, those kids who say, yeah, it doesn't bother me, but it's clearly getting in the way. They say, I don't mind it so much, or it's nothing, or never mind, or forget about it, but it's clearly affecting them. So there are several ways that we can go about this. First of all, we have to recognize the equation that describes when people are ready to make a change in their lives. I say equation, I don't mean a mathematical equation. I mean a balance between a desire to change something that is affecting you with how much effort it takes to change that thing, because changing speech is hard. I don't know if any of you have tried to do it. Some of you on the line may well have, to try to change something about something as automated and as basic as how we speak. People may be motivated to do that, but it's very hard. And if the pain of change is greater than the pain of staying the same, then you won't change, even if you don't like where you are. And for kids, if they're in a state of denial, oh no, it doesn't bother me, I'm fine, it's really hard to change. You're going to see that they'll never be able to overcome that distinction. What do? Two things. We bring down the pain of change. I'll talk about how in just a second. And we help them see the pain of staying the same. The way I do that, work on helping them see the pain of staying the same, is talk with them about the way stuttering affects them. I personally do that using the Oasis. That's one of the reasons I developed it. I go through the Oasis with my clients, item by item, and we talk about the things that they're having difficulty doing because of their stuttering. Okay. And this is not to make them feel bad. It's just to help them see, oh, yeah, you marked on this form that you have trouble telling a joke to your friends. I'll tell you what, why don't we focus our therapy on making it easier to tell a joke to your friends? That's something they want. And that helps them see the pain of staying the same. Say, yeah, I can't be who I want to be. You marked on this phone that you can't talk on the phone, although none of the teens talk on the phone. You marked on this form here that you're having trouble reading aloud in class, or whatever it is that's affecting them. We help them see that. And then at the same time, we focus on bringing down the pain of change. This is one of the most critical aspects of therapy that is so often overlooked. And it's overlooked because we're so eager to jump into giving them tools and giving them techniques and giving them strategies. What we don't do is spend sufficient time laying a foundation for their success. This is how we can get the therapy started, is by focusing on foundation building. I'm about to share the screen again because I want you to see that on our resources page, we have, I can't find them. Where are they? I'm on our resources page. Oh, here it is. Sorry. We have another video series here, practical tips videos, and this is a video series on laying the foundation for therapy and introducing techniques. Everybody's interested in the techniques part, but let me tell you that the most important part is this one, introduction, that Nina did, and this one, foundations, that I did. You can introduce the foundations for your therapy to the children, to the teens, and that helps them to get going with you. That helps you get started. You didn't say, hey, today we're going to talk about your feelings. It comes out in learning about the speech mechanism, in learning what they do when they stutter, in learning that they can overcome that shame and that fear, and that builds from there. So much more to say, and that's why we have videos about it.
And Scott, if I think there's another question here that might roll into what you just said, so I'm going to go right from what you just said and talk about Conrad's
Oh,
question.
yes,
Oh,
please. Yes. Hi,
yes.
Conrad.
And so I see the question is about moving the easier stuttering into the daily speaking situations at school, because as Conrad very insightfully knows, that speaking in any kind of new way feels weird to the kids and they're worried about sounding weird to others. So as Scott was just talking about setting that foundation and desensitizing to actual stuttering, we always make the point that when we're talking with our colleagues and presenting and writing on this topic is that you also have to help children desensitize to the way that techniques or strategies feel and sound. Okay. I think, and Scott and I have had to talk about this many times, it's much more important to focus and help the child focus on how it feels and not worry too much about how it sounds. But you can't negate the fact that you can't devalidate the fact that these kiddos do care about how it sounds. And so we have to help them step back and think about, okay, what would happen if someone noticed that you used a technique? Okay. And wait, how likely is it for them to notice that you've used a technique? Is it 80% likely? Is it 100% likely? And try to help them balance their fears of what ifs with what could be the realities. That I got to tell you, kids who don't stutter don't notice stuff. The people who stutter, as we say many times in stuttering community, people who stutter are much harder on themselves than the population usually is. But that worry and concern is very important to that child, and we have to be the ones to help them desensitize to utilizing those strategies along a hierarchy of difficulty, getting it out from the therapy room and moving into their real life as quickly as possible for that child. Again, so much more to say. Could have a half hour just on that.
The generalization hierarchy is so important, and it's hard because we get impatient, and we know the kids are impatient to be better, but taking our time is the key to success. I know if I think about my failures as a clinician, the times when I just haven't gotten it right, it was often because I got impatient. I tried to move too fast. So, yeah.
But I
The,
was trying to pull it up while you were talking, Scott, but we also have a practical tip on explaining hierarchies to others.
yes, we
So
do.
that's on the website, and I would really, it's going to be in one of our blog posts this weekend about helping SLPs help others in this child's environment understand that just because they know it's okay to stutter with mom and dad doesn't mean they feel automatically it's okay to stutter in their classroom, and that they learned a technique at the word level in a very structured space with their speech language pathologist doesn't mean they're ready to do it at the dinner table tonight. So we have to really help people understand that generalization hierarchy in the child's environment, and help the child understand it as well, so they don't go too far too fast. I've had so many students they just want to run with it, and I'm excited that they're excited, except running with it sometimes makes it not work because they're just not at that level yet. So they come back and they're like, that technique didn't work for me, and they sort of throw it away because they didn't work the plan. And so we have to be the people who continually talk about hierarchies.
Every situation that a child is in is a unique situation. That's a tough, tough thing because they think, I can do it there. Why can't I do it there? Well, it's because they're different situations. We have another excellent question here. Shall I move on, Nina, to the next one? Great. This one from Jason, and I can say the name because he posted it to everyone. So, how do we let kids know that they're okay while we're treating the stutter? Boy, is this an important question. It's almost a mixed message sometimes. Say you're okay, but you got to change. You're okay. How do we help the kids understand that we truly, truly believe that they're okay? I love this question because this is something that we really struggle with for parents and teachers, and sadly, some other speech language pathologists. The notion of what acceptance really means. People tend to think of acceptance as giving up on the fluency part. And that's not what we intend by this. What we intend by acceptance is recognizing that we can change our behaviors, even though we don't have to hate ourselves along the way. I can be okay even as I'm learning something different. And I'll talk about this with kids unrelated to speech, okay? Because first they can understand it in other areas of their lives, and then we can apply it to speech. I'll give you an example. Kids who are into basketball might practice shooting free throws because they want to get better at free throws. They don't have to be mad at themselves for not being great at free throws when they start. They want to practice to get better, but they're okay with themselves along the way. For me, I'll often share a personal example. I myself am, and I'm really struggling with this right now, I myself would like to weigh a little less. I would feel more healthy. The pain of change on that one is way harder than the pain of staying the same. And so it's a struggle for me to do that. I don't have to hate myself for where I am. I can get frustrated. Sure, that's normal, that's human, but I can work toward changing to where I'd like to be. So we can help our kids who stutter realize that, yes, we're okay when we stutter. There's nothing that we're doing wrong. Stuttering is just the result of a glitch in how our brains plan and produce language and speech. We're not doing anything wrong, it's just how we are. At the same time, we can learn to cope with the stuttering in a way that's a little easier for us. We aren't doing anything bad, but we can make our lives easier for us. And I focus not on fluency. In fact, I never tell people, adults or kids, you have to do this so that you'll be more fluent. The whole purpose of therapy is simply to reduce the burden of stuttering on them, to help them speak more easily so they can say what they want to say. And when we present it that way from the beginning, then acceptance is not giving up. Acceptance is tolerating the thing that we don't love while we learn to handle it a little bit more effectively. Does that help? Nina, please add. Yeah.
Well, and I think so many of the questions that are coming up are very interrelated. So I'm going to add to that while answering another question. As Scott just so very well put, the idea is to work on the entirety of the impact of having stuttering on the child's life, on the quality of life, on their ability to communicate in all of the settings in which they communicate, not just school, not just home, not just social, because school is also social. I'm about ready to answer a question about remote IEPs and remote
Oh, good.
arts,
Okay.
um,
Good. Excellent. Yes.
because this is what Scott said, and adding now what I'm going to say is going to help the school administrator that this participant is sort of saying, that sometimes school administrators misunderstand and say that the beliefs and feelings part, the stuff about their thoughts and feelings and your counseling, that shouldn't be addressed in school. That's extra clinical, it's outside of school. And I can't disagree enough. I can see Scott shaking his head. We can't disagree enough. But how do we help someone who doesn't know anything about stuttering, i.e. an administrator? That doesn't make them not intelligent, it makes them not know about stuttering. And so going into those meetings, I have to assume that the people at the meeting are there to help this child, and to make certain that they're successful in school. Knowing about stuttering, though, we know that being successful communicating in a school environment is much more than talking. It's much more than whether you stuttered or you didn't, whether you used a technique or you didn't. This is so much bigger than that. And so when we help other people understand the entirety of the disorder, we've written chapters upon chapters about this. We've written some blogs and other practical tips. Again, there's a lot of information already ready for you on this. But for administrators and educators alike, we have to understand that helping them see the big picture. Can I give you a tip that I do? Number one, I use the iceberg. I literally can draw an iceberg. I've been known to draw an iceberg in an IEP meeting. Yes, I have. And number two, I got to tell you, I use the ICF model, the World Health Organization ICF model that Scott co-authored. And I help people see the entirety of the disorder in a very small amount of time in a nice succinct framework. But all of those little arrows going back and forth, Mr. Administrator, mean that this child needs much more than speech therapy. They need communication therapy. And that includes how I think and how I feel and what I do in response to not being able to communicate the way that I want to.
I just want to add real quickly, those of you who aren't familiar with the ICF model, I just put it up on your
So you
screen.
pulled it up.
This is the newest version that was just published in an article in JSLHR, came out in December of last year. And it's an update to what I've done for, I don't want to count how long now. The way it works is it says this, hey, I saw that. Yeah, the way it works is for some underlying reason, that's the underlying genetics and the neurology of stuttering, people experience a sensation of being stuck or of losing control inside, that sense that they know what they want to say, but they can't say it. That's stuttering, okay? And that leads them to react in certain ways, affectively, feelings, the emotions that they have, the fear, the shame, the embarrassment, the anxiety, to exhibit certain behaviors like tension, struggle, and disruptions in speech, and to think certain thoughts like, I can't say it, I'm not good enough, I deserve to be bullied. And these reactions are what lead to the adverse impact in kids' lives. In the school, at that IEP meeting or at your ARD meeting, it's the adverse impact that you're supposed to be working on. That's the magic word. And you say that, well, in order to get to this adverse impact, I need to work on the entire experience because that comes from the child's reactions and certainly from the reactions of others. I could go on and on about that. Email me if you would like. If you're an ASHA member, just access it on ASHA Wire. Okay, it came out in December of 2019. If you have trouble, just drop me an email. I'll be happy to send you the paper that this came from, because I'll whip this out and draw this out in a meeting as well to help administrators, teachers, parents, kids themselves, adults understand the big picture and why we're looking at the big picture.
And Scott,
Okay.
I see a ton of iceberg questions.
Oh, good.
So yes, let me do that while you thumb through and see something fun to
Oh
answer.
no, there's a really good one that I want to.
Oh,
So they're all good. They're all good. But
go
let me
for the.
address this one. There's this one that didn't get on the public list. So I'm gonna.
Oh, okay.
Um, this is a situation where a clinician showed a video from the SFA, nice video about stuttering. Okay, and the goal of the video was to show kids that they're not alone in facing stuttering. But this child, for whatever reason, just wasn't ready for that, wasn't at that stage, and was horrified to find out that that's what he sounded like. I've had this happen too. Okay. But remember, I said my biggest difficulty as a clinician is in judging how fast to go. And sometimes I've taken people down paths for desensitization that they weren't quite ready for. I misjudged. Okay. In fact, I did that just last week with a kid that I was eager to move on. And that happens. That's okay. At first, they may respond negatively. And when that happens, it's all right. It is normal and acceptable to have emotions about stuttering, just that it is as it is normal and acceptable to have emotions about how to cope with being locked in your house for weeks on end. It's okay. And I let them know when they have those emotional reactions that these are normal reactions. And I point out to them that those kids that they saw on the video or the adults that they saw on the video, they had those reactions too when they first started. They were scared. They were surprised when they first started. But look at how far they've come now, and you can do that too. In other words, it's supposed to offer hope, right? But sometimes people aren't ready for hope. I've had changes in my own life where people are trying to tell me, yeah, it's going to be okay, and I'm just not ready to hear it. Yeah, that's okay. That's part of the process of change. So don't give up. Don't give in. Give them time. Bring them back a few steps on their desensitization hierarchy to find their solid footing, and then gradually move forward, but maybe a touch slower in those cases.
And that's so wonderful, Scott, because Meg asked a question about a child who's 100% avoidant of wanting to discuss it. Scott just answered that question in many ways, but I want to add a couple of things. What Scott was really talking about is validating what a child is feeling. I tend to be a cheerleader, so I have struggled with allowing myself to step back. And if you don't mind, I'm going to use my adolescent guy group language for just a moment. It's not bad. It's just there's a word. They're like, but Miss Nina, this just really sucks right now. And I'm like, you know what? Yeah, I can hear you telling me, and I can see that it sucks right now. And it's okay. It's okay that it sucks. And sorry, I said it like 5 times, but there you go. I'm desensitizing you to the word. And the idea there is we can sit in those moments with kids and not try to fix. That's very hard for clinicians sometimes to learn the skill of validating and then sitting, stepping back. Now, we're not just going to sit and wallow, right? That's not the role. But we are going to allow that child to have those feelings and then find out where they come from. So I really don't want to talk about my stuttering because, and I do a lot of reflective writing with kiddos if they're able to do that with me, or drawing, because sometimes they can write or draw what they will not or cannot put into words. And so it's okay to sit in those moments and go, okay, we don't need to go on my idea of what this kid needs. We can wait and sit with this child and have him or her lead me to know what they need right now. And Scott was saying, you know, you're not ready for that. And we always add the word yet. That's okay.
It'll come.
We don't have to go fast. We have a growth mentality to this because, you know, change is good, but change is hard. And so knowing that and validating that is always helpful for those kiddos who have a lot of trouble um, dealing with what's happening in their speech right now.
People can make positive changes. It's just the school age years are a tough time to do it, no matter what the issue is. And I think if we can go into this recognizing that indeed it will be hard and it's not our fault and it's not their fault and it's not the parents' fault or the administrator's fault. Some of it's the administrator's fault. We can really, though, help them take a nice future oriented view of their stuttering. I want to bop into one quick ICF question. Great question from Meg about how do we reflect the ICF model in measurable goals. So yeah, let me address that. And I've written a ton on this, but real quickly, when I showed that model, and I'll often draw it when I'm explaining it to people in a real messy way, um, but I write goals that match the components of the model. So in fact, let me just quickly bring it back up here on the screen. I write goals that address dealing with the sensation of being stuck. I write goals that deal with the reduction in negative reactions, the affective reactions, feelings, the reductions in the behavioral reactions, tension, struggle, disfluencies, avoidance, and I write goals for the cognitive reactions. Then I write goals on adverse impact, and I write goals on environment, educating the environment. There's four key areas that I write my goals in, and they relate directly to the ICF. And if people ask you, why are you doing this? Why is this what you base it on? I ask them if they've read their ASHA scope of practice document lately. I know most people haven't, okay? But if you read your ASHA scope of practice document, you will see that the ICF is the foundation of our scope of practice. So when other clinicians say, oh, yeah, no, I never work on the feelings, or oh, yeah, I focus on the speech, I understand that that's what they're doing, but that's really not what they're supposed to be doing, because our ASHA scope of practice says that we work on the entire ICF representation. And if you're like me, you always do what ASHA tells you to do. So there's that. So there was that question. Oh, and let me also tell you, in our school age stuttering therapy book, chapter 12 has a bunch of sample goals organized in a very similar fashion, not exactly the same. What we did with that one is we related it to the chapters in the book so that you can say, oh, yeah, I'm working on desensitization. Well, there's sample goals for desensitization. I'm working on fluency enhancers. There's sample goals for fluency enhancers. That's all in chapter 12. And indeed, while I've got it, Conrad is exactly right. Being able to increase tolerance for speech disruptions, that is exactly what I was working on in a session with a client. This is an adult client, but this morning at 9:15, we met and we spent 45 minutes together working on tolerating those disruptions, because for this individual at this point in his life, they are intolerable. And so before we even worry about his fears about other people's reactions, we first have to help the toughest critic on him, which is him. So we got into staying in the moment of a stutter. With my adults, I talk about it as rolling it around in your mouth, feeling it, savoring it like it's a fine wine, and in just enjoying it as well as you can. I don't talk to my kids about enjoying it like it's wine, but chocolate works. Talk about a great piece of chocolate or whatever their favorite food is, just enjoying as well as they can. And they look at me like, are you nuts? Enjoy a stutter? So, yeah, yeah. Enjoy the feeling that you can have that uncertainty, that stuckness, and still be with it. And it's a game changer when they can do that.
All
Oh,
right.
are we caught up?
No,
No,
I
no,
think
no.
sort
There's
of.
others.
I think
There's
sort
others.
of. We've got a bunch of one or two that are about the iceberg. So, yeah, regarding the iceberg, is it appropriate to discuss this in a group of students who stutter? And then someone else asked about
Yes.
the
There was
iceberg
one. Oh,
in
go
a
ahead.
different
Sorry.
way. Do you have it?
No, I'm scanning for iceberg here.
Yeah, something about, I don't know. Anyway, but let me ask. Oh, absolutely good thing to discuss the iceberg in a therapy. Oh, you already answered it. Never mind.
I just answered it in Word on the text. What about the? Let's talk briefly about the telepractice issue. Of course, our first office hours that we did 2 weeks ago was specifically focused on telepractice issues for school age kids. It's recorded. It's on our website under the resources page, and it is on our YouTube page. So those answers are there in the chat window. Um, but indeed, let me just hit a couple of really quick highlights while we give people a chance to type in a couple more questions. One of the really quick highlights is this. Oh, and there is a question specifically about this from Kathleen. Everyone is looking right now for games that they can use online, spinners, giving the kid remote control of the mouse when you're on Zoom and all that stuff. And all that's great. There are some really, really cool online adaptations, high tech ways of engaging children. But there are also some really great low tech ways. And one of the big points that we made a couple of weeks ago is that we don't actually need to go high tech in order to help kids who stutter. Yes, games are great for keeping their attention. Absolutely, no question about that. But in terms of the therapy itself, we can practice our saying what we want to say no matter what. We can practice our stuttering handling strategies no matter what. We can practice fluency enhancing strategies no matter what, just by talking. So I talk to the kids about whatever they're interested in. I know so much. about Call of Duty and Fortnite, even though I've never played them. I know so much about certain book series that the kids have read. I try to keep up on the young adult literature. It's right about my level for the enjoyment that I've got. And so we talk about those things. I have a little guy right now that I'm working with, and he is into a comic book series. He calls them comic books, not graphic novels. I tried that, and he said, no, it's just a comic book. So that's fine. But I've learned so much about this comic book series because we're talking about what they're interested in. The more we do that, the more we support generalization anyway. So although you can go high tech, it's great. You can also keep it simple, recognizing, in fairness, that there are some things that are harder to do via telepractice. For example, desensitization in the real world can't be done right now. The thing that I most miss when I'm doing telepractice is meeting my clients at the mall and going around. All right, I used to go with one to a pet store and talking about, well, how much does a python cost and stuff like that, and practicing being in the real world. Right now, nobody's out. Well, many people are out in the real world, and we're grateful to those who are on the front lines of dealing with the virus. But a lot of people aren't out in the real world. And so those aspects of therapy I'm de emphasizing right now while I'm emphasizing some other aspects.
And I'll piggyback onto that. And Scott, if you'll just notice, Lisa would really like us to
Lisa,
answer
yes, I'm sorry. Yours
childhood
didn't end up
questions.
on our spreadsheet. Yes, you got it, Lisa. We'll do that one
Yeah,
next.
Lisa, we were going to just keep it to school age today, but you know what? You are persistent and
No, no,
wonderful,
she's a
and
friend too.
yeah,
So yeah, of
and
course.
we've got it for you. But I'm going to piggyback on what Scott said about the telepractice. We've got some videos on it, we've got an office hours on it, and we've got handouts on it. And you're going to hear us say over and over again, it's okay to keep low tech. Two things. Right now, we're not seeing kids, for an hour at a time, and so it's okay that they may not have the best attention with us. That's okay. So you can still keep it low tech. If you want to move to more high tech, you don't need specific fluency stuff or stuttering stuff.
Right.
Use language based materials for communication. Use them at the right hierarchy for whatever level that child is on. And you can use those types of already made, everybody's just making and giving away lots of resources in that area right now. And so utilizing those to bring into your fluency disorder therapy is just fine as well.
Great. All right. So Lisa has the question again. I'm sorry, I don't know why I didn't make it on our spreadsheet. Expectations for timing and tension carrying over into conversational speech. Terrific question. It relates to some of the things we've been talking about wanting to work our way up the hierarchy really quickly. I spend a lot of effort with my kids structuring their hierarchies to give them lots of time to develop comfort and some automaticity as we're working up that hierarchy. The way we say it is that every activity you do is a generalization activity from the very beginning of therapy. Just some of those generalization activities are foundational where they're practicing with us. So I start off with those timing intention strategies in the therapy setting. If you're working with school age kids, you may have a parent now on the telepractice that you don't often get to see. So there's opportunities for practice there. But I ask them to start off after they've worked with me with one person that they can explain the strategy to and set aside some practice time with. Just one person. Again, I did this with a client this morning. Tolerating stuttering, I asked them to think about what is one person, who is one person that you could explain about tolerating stuttering and then do a little practice with. And that starts that generalization out into the real world. For timing and tension strategies, maybe it's pausing and phrasing, maybe it's easy start, maybe it's reducing physical tension during a stutter, whatever it is. But starting off, practicing with me, then practicing with that one person, and then practicing with a second person, and helping the kids see that just because they can do it with me doesn't mean they can do it with mom. And just because they can do it with mom doesn't mean they can do it with dad. But as they start to climb that ladder of their hierarchy, they'll find that they can get there everywhere. I ask the kids to make a list, and we do this right in the therapy, of everybody they've talked to. Everybody they ever talked to on a typical day. And you might think at first, oh, that's so many people, but really it's not that many, especially now. But when life returns to whatever it's going to return to or move to, um, they'll come up with a list that's finite. The number of people they talk to, it's finite. It's a manageable number, maybe 20. Yeah, and we can one at a time tackle talking with each of those people, generalizing our timing intention strategies one at a time. They'll pick up speed. It'll snowball as they go. It'll get easier as they go. But helping them see that, oh yeah, we can get through 20 people. We got all school year. We can get through 20 people. And that's what helps them generalize. So the way you asked it, great question about the expectations for timing and tension carrying over into conversational speech. I have zero expectation that it will until we specifically generalize. And then when we do it one at a time, well, the beauty of a hierarchy is it helps people get to things that they never thought they'd be able to do. And as they see that they can do it, whatever the it is, oh, they love it. And they start climbing that ladder faster and faster and faster.
And to that end, I'm looking. We're going to have. I'm going to turn on 2 blog posts that are just sitting in our list, Scott.
Oh, great.
That seem to go with a lot of the things we talked about today and a lot of the questions that we answered. Um, how can we help school age children become desensitized to stuttering? And
Great.
there's one in here that, well, I can't see it right now, but I'm going to post it and we'll get it up right away after our talk today. I want to go ahead, Scott, or did we get everybody, do you think?
I think we've got everybody. If we missed you, just as we're scrolling by, please feel free to email us. You can get us at info@stutteringtherapyresources.com. That'll come to me and I share those with Nina. Yeah, reach out to us. Oh, in fact, our last slide
Yes, here it
is,
comes.
yeah,
Yep, I got it up.
we're
So,
planning more office hours. We're going to do this
yep,
again every next week.
yep,
And there's our contact info.
yeah.
Somebody had asked about which book had the goals. That's the school. Well, there's goals in both of them, right? But the ones that were focused on the ICF, again, it's slightly different because we made it in terms of the chapters of the book to help people get to it. But it's the same general concept. It's this school age stuttering therapy, a practical guide.
And if I'm not telling secrets out of school, we are working on some goal information for the future. You know, time in the day, productivity is a little different right now, so that will come a little at a time. We've got a lot of things in the works. Hopefully, we'll be at ASHA this year. I hope there will be an ASHA this year in San Diego. But we like to roll out our new things around that time. So just keep watching. We have a lot of free things we'll be posting and new information coming all the time.